No matter how hard you diet, how consistent you are with your training, how long you diet for, year after year, despite your efforts, it seems like you cannot just get the job done. You can't get lean, you can't get shredded and shift that body fat. And you're told it's just as simple as obviously, moving more and eating less food. And you try this and it seems like it's simply just not working. And before you know it, you've fallen off track, you've given up on your goals, and still you are not in the shape that you want to be. And I know this because I've been in your shoes before, right? At university, when I tried to diet down in the past, I was inconsistent with my foods, even when I felt like I was. My sleep was absolutely awful, so my training performance in the gym suffered as a result. I lost muscle mass, I did way too much cardio. However, now many years later, it's safe to say I've actually learned a thing or two. I've competed in many natural bodybuilding shows, I've won natural bodybuilding shows, I've been very low levels of body fat, and I've also helped hundreds of guys around the world win shows and get shredded. So that is exactly what I'm gonna be sharing with you in this video today, so you can learn from my mistakes, my stupid mistakes in the past, but also the things that my clients have done that I've helped them overcome that's finally allowed them to get into the best shape of their life. So sit back, relax. Here's 6 mistakes that you want to avoid if you want to get truly shredded. Mistake number 1 is a lack of accuracy with your nutrition. Now, this is probably one of the biggest killers of all fat loss phases. And a little saying that I like to use here is, you can never ever outwork a bad diet, right? You can quite comfortably sit there and within 5 minutes consume like 300 to 400 calories in literally just a few mouthfuls, right? But in order to burn that 300, 400 calories in the gym doing cardio, you'd need to do around half an hour to maybe even 40 minutes of cardio. So quickly, if your nutrition is not consistent and it's not measured, you can quickly push yourself out of your deficit for the day and slow down your fat loss. This typically comes in the form of, say, for instance, people aren't tracking their food, right? They're just guessing how much food they need in the day. Roughly, I think I'm eating around, 2,500 calories, but I don't really have a clue. Or maybe, for instance, they're adding in sauces and oils and spreads to their meals, and they don't have an awareness in regards to how many calories they're actually adding in. You can easily rack up like 300 calories, maybe even 400 calories just from condiments, oils, and butters into your meals each and every single day. And that is enough to, again, put you into that surplus or maybe back to your maintenance rather than a deficit. And then we have just general inconsistency, right? Even if people are being a little bit more measured with things, maybe they've got a meal plan or they are tracking their foods, on rest days when they're not in the gym and they're not training and they find themselves like occupying themselves or something, they use food. So they end up eating more food on their rest days because they're bored. And then again, before you know it, they've put themselves outside of that deficit and slowing down their fat loss. So regardless of who you are, you can never ever outwork a bad diet. You need to be consistent with the foods that you're eating every single day, and you need to start building awareness around your nutrition. And unless you've been in this game for a long time, you've done many dieting phases, you've had a lot of meal plans before, you've got a lot of knowledge in regards to what foods contain and how many calories, how many macros, the likelihood is you need to start building awareness and educating yourself around your nutrition. And an easy way to do this is to actually use apps such as MyFitnessPal. And some people call this obsessive, but I actually think it's a really good and useful way for people to build awareness in regards to their nutrition. And eventually in the future, you'll then be able to actually say goodbye to those apps. You'll have a good idea in regards to what your body needs, how many calories X meals contain, X food items contain, and you can actually eat intuitively and lose fat intuitively in the future. Next up, you also want to be getting some scales, right? Get some food scales and weigh the foods that you're having. We can't guess here, like we need to be accurate, and we need to make sure that we're measuring out oils that we're using, condiments, spreads, all of these things need to be measured so we can make sure that we know exactly how many calories that you're putting into your mouth. I also recommend just planning ahead, rather than just kind of leaving it up to react to what you're gonna eat each and every single meal. Plan ahead in your day, maybe even in your week. I personally like to meal prep pretty much all of my meals for like 4 or 5 days, right? And that way, I know exactly what I'm eating every single day. It's automated. I don't even need to think about it. So rather than being reactive with your foods, plan out your day, prep your meals. That way it takes out a lot of stress and it's gonna help keep you consistent on training days, rest days, literally every single day. So remember, you can never ever outwork a bad diet. All these small little things that you incorporate in the small little slip-ups, guess what? They add up over time, and before you know it, you're no longer gonna be losing fat. Big mistake number 2, and that is using way too little food and not enough cardio. Now, a lot of us nowadays, we're impatient, right? We want results just like this. We're so used to using phones and apps that give you everything that you want super, super quickly that we're not patient with anything anymore. Now, when it comes to fat loss, you can't rush it. You need to play a longer game, a patient game, if you actually want to get good quality results. But at the start of a dieting phase, what is the quickest, least effort way in order to drive fat loss? It's with a big food drop, right? And the issue with this is that before you know it, you're running out of steam, right? If you imagine like a train going down some train tracks, you need to load coal into that train in order to keep it going. If it doesn't get enough coal, it's gonna grind to a stop. And when it grinds to a stop, it's gonna take a lot more energy to get that train going again from a standstill. It's much, much easier to give your body the fuel that it needs to keep that momentum up. And that momentum is the quality, consistency, long-term of your fat loss phase. So cardio is not the enemy when it comes to fat loss. Cardio is not going to lead to muscle loss, and in fact, it's quite the opposite. The more food that you can eat throughout your dieting phase, the better your training performance is going to be. And the better that your training performance is going to be, the more muscle that you can retain. And metabolically, this is going to keep you in a really nice position, because if you have more muscle mass, your body demands more food. And if your body's demanding more food, that can also help drive more fat loss. But as well as that, if you're eating more food, you can perform better in the gym. And when you perform better in the gym, that also expends more calories. And if you're expending more calories, guess what's happening? You are burning more body fat. So once you've got your steps going, you've got some cardio sessions going too, if fat loss slows down, literally just add in a little bit more cardio. No, don't be lazy. There is more to give in this process. A lot of people just don't want to do the hard work. You can do a lot more cardio and a lot more steps than you actually think, rather than solely just relying on that food. So be patient, keep the food nice and high. It's gonna help your recovery, it's gonna keep your body happy, and a happy body is one that's gonna be more willing to actually drive fat loss. Cardio is not a punishment, right? It is a tool that we can use in order to drive fat loss, and it allows us to keep that food higher. If the food is higher, you are gonna look better. Mistake number 3 is having a weak mind as soon as food gets dropped. Now, I've had conversations with people in the past, and they've turned around to me and said, right, I'm in a dieting phase now, food has got lower, so I'm probably gonna start getting weaker very soon. This mindset straight away is literally just setting you up for failure, right? If you start telling yourself that you are going to get weaker just because you've only just entered a dieting phase, you will get weaker, right? You are literally laying the foundations for you to actually get weak, because you're going in with a defeatist mindset, right? Whereas the mindset going into a dieting phase should be the opposite. It should be, right, I'm dieting now, so I need to do every single little thing that I can do in order to make sure that I do not get weak. If you've been eating a good amount of food for a set amount of time, right, you should not be losing strength anytime soon. And the likelihood is, if you're going into a dieting phase, you also have some body fat. And guess what? Body fat is energy. You have got this on your body. So just because your calories have been removed doesn't mean that your body's short of energy. But again, if you're telling yourself that you're going to be weaker, you're going to get weaker. Now, that being said, it is normal to get weaker in a dieting phase, right? You are losing body fat. Your body is physically getting lighter. Weight moves weight, okay? It's just basic physics. So if you're getting lighter and you're losing body fat around the joints, and eventually in your dieting phase, energy will get lower, yes, you will drop off strength as you diet down. But this should not be something that happens within the first few weeks of your dieting phase. And if it does, either your nutrition is way too low, other elements such as your sleep and hydration are completely out of whack, or I can probably bet your mindset is just frail. So yes, despite the fact that you will eventually get weaker throughout your dieting phase, and it's a normal part of the process, the psychological barriers that you're putting in place for yourself unknowingly are much worse than the actual physical reality, right? You're shooting yourself in the foot. So a few things that I recommend that you do in order to overcome this is to track your lifts and focus on long-term trends rather than just being reactive to a bad training session, because we all have them. Just because you have 1 or 2 bad training sessions in the week doesn't mean that your dieting phase is ruined and that you're losing all of your muscle mass, because you might find if you keep a positive mindset, reflect on what you could have improved in that session, maybe ate more food beforehand, being a bit more hydrated, or got more sleep, you might actually have a good training session the following week. So focus on the long-term trends. It's also a good idea to really focus in on your execution. Pick movements that really feel good for you. Eventually in your dieting phase, switch to machine-based movements rather than free weights, so you've got a little bit more stability and you don't have to use so much energy to stabilize the movement. But really focus on slowing down your movements to get the most out of them, so you don't have to lift sheer weight towards the end in order to get that same amount of stimulus. And also just prime your mindset going into your training sessions. Just remember that just because you're on lower food doesn't mean that you're going to be weaker. And if anything, this is more reason now than ever to push yourself harder than you ever have done. So just remember, you don't start getting weaker when you automatically just start a dieting phase, right? Maintaining that strength and keeping that strength there is going to help drive fat loss. If anything, your body's got a lot more to give. The quickest thing that's going to give out is your mindset first. Mistake number 4 is not dealing with high stress and not prioritizing your sleep. When you go into a dieting phase, you are willfully putting your body into a stressed state, right? It doesn't want to lose fat. Right? In order to make it lose fat, you need to challenge yourself, and your body as a result gets inflamed and it gets stressed out. So if your recovery is poor because you're not sleeping properly, if your stress is high because things are going on in your life, and don't get me wrong, like stress is a normal part of life, but if you're not putting things in place in order to deal with those stresses, offload those stresses, sleep correctly, your body's going to be trashed before you know it. And a trashed body, one that is tired and fatigued, is going to be imbalanced in its hormones. It's not going to recover properly from your training, and it's not going to be a body that actually drops body fat efficiently. And when hormones are impacted, such as ghrelin and leptin, because you haven't got enough sleep and you're super tired, so your body then looks to food in order to actually give you that energy that you need, guess what? It's going to make staying on plan and eating the correct foods even harder. But as well as that, if your hormones are out of whack and your inflammation is high, scale weight is going to do crazy things because you are inflamed, you're holding onto water, and it's giving you fake plateaus in your body weight. You could actually be losing body fat, but your weight is staying the same because your body's so tired and fatigued that's holding onto that fluid, and it's giving you skewed body weights. So in a nutshell, if you are not dealing with your stress and if you're not recovering properly from your training because your sleep is awful, you are setting yourself up for failure. It's going to make it harder to stick to the plan. Your body's not going to respond in the way you want it to. So in order to overcome these issues, what I recommend that you do, nice and simple, shoot for around 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, even on the weekends, and fight to keep that routine consistent. As well as that, get outside more. Simply go for a walk in the morning. Go for walks after your meals in the day. Get more sunlight. The amount of people nowadays that work from home or in offices and they wonder why they're stressed out of their tree is because they're constantly plugged into the matrix on a computer and they don't get outside in nature or get sunlight. So walk in between your meals, get outside at any means that you can. Quite literally, if you are stressed, go for a walk. Another big thing is caffeine intake. Because we're all so stressed and underslept, guess what we lean onto? We lean onto caffeine, but guess what caffeine also does as well? It ruins sleep even more, especially if you're drinking after 2 to 3 p.m. And as well as that, it ramps up your cortisol levels, which are going to make you feel more stressed, and they're also going to impact your ability to recover. So in general, limit your caffeine intake. If anything, just like I have, stop drinking caffeine entirely and you'll realize how less anxious or stressed that you feel throughout the day and how much better your sleep quality is. But if you are going to drink caffeine, do not drink any after 2 to 3 p.m. at the absolute latest. And finally, establish a little bit of an evening wind down routine. Rather than blasting yourself with your lights in your house or your phone screen and then just rolling over and expecting to be able to go to sleep, actually set aside an hour or so in order to wind down, right? Reflect on the day, read a book, meditate, listen to some music, something that just doesn't involve you being plugged into a device, entertaining your brain and giving your eyes blue light, which are just going to keep you up. Establish a wind down routine and stick to it religiously. A nice little thing to remember here is that fat loss is not just a game of calories or expenditure, you know, how much you can beat your body into the ground. It's also a game of recovery, because the more recovered you can be, the better you're going to perform, the more you can move, the more energized you can be. Therefore, the more muscle you're going to retain, and the more fat loss you can drive. Now, mistake number 5 goes out to all of you weekend warriors, right? This is where the majority of people go wrong, right? You've had your Monday to Friday, you've been on plan, you've been dialed in, everything has been perfect. As soon as the weekend rolls around, you're off plan, you're drinking alcohol, you're going overboard because you're blowing off some steam after a stressful week at work. And because you've done well throughout the week, it's time to treat yourself with some food. Before you know it, Monday rolls around, you're like 2-3 kilos up and you're restarting the progress that you've made the previous week all over again. And every single weekend, this cycle just continues over and over again. And before you know it, you're spinning your wheels and you're not losing any body fat. Now, in order to be successful with your fat loss, you don't need to be a social little reject that cancels all of the plans that your friends put in place, or the meal that your girlfriend has been nagging you at for months and months on end. You can go out and you can enjoy yourself, but you need to be proactive and you need to put plans in place, right? You should have a plan in place of your calories. You should have an awareness in regards to how many calories you're eating. So if you're going out for a meal or having a couple drinks, then plan it into your calories. If you're eating 2,600 calories and you want to set aside 800 calories for a meal out, do that. Eat 1,600 calories before you go out in the evening, have 800 calories. Therefore, you've still stayed on track with your nutrition. If you're having alcohol, have 1 to 2 drinks. If you get shit-faced drunk, then all of this advice is just gonna go out the window because you're then probably gonna eat more food afterwards when you're drunk in yourself. So just have some self-control. Rather than having 8 beers, have a beer. It's also a good idea to just make sure that you've got your goals ticked off for the week. Make sure you've got all your training sessions in. If you're gonna be having a little bit of a drink, have a rest day the day after. Make sure that you've been on point with your nutrition throughout the week. Just make sure that you're actually setting aside the room on the weekends to be able to enjoy yourself. And then when you do go out, look, you don't need to be perfect. Track loosely, just make sure that it's consistent, because if you just completely switch off and you don't have your goals at the forefront of your mind, you are going to go off track and you're going to every single weekend undo the progress that you've made. So remember, you don't need to be obsessive. You don't need to be clinically perfect with your weekends, but it is where most diets die. So just make sure that you're going into your weekend with your head screwed on and with a plan of action in place. And finally, mistake number 6 is your severe lack of patience. If you are expecting night and day differences within the matter of a few days of starting your dieting phase, or even a few weeks for that fact, then you are setting yourself up for success. And when you don't see those changes or those results, you feel like you're not making any progress, you emotionally make drastic changes. And as we said at the start, with those drastic changes, i.e. dropping your food down too quick or doing way too much cardio too quickly, you are going to run out of steam and your fat loss phase is going to grind to a halt. But as well as that, just being emotional about everything, feeling like you're not making progress, often more than not leads to people to give up because it's been 3 weeks and they're not a shredded god. They don't look like Ziz in his prime. Be realistic with yourself, right? Think about how long it's taken you to get out of shape or put on this body fat. It's gonna take you a little bit of a while to take it off. So if you are patient enough to actually gain the body fat and not be on track with your goals, you can be a little bit more patient in order to give yourself the time that you need to be able to actually get to the physique that you want. But as well as that, you're gonna see fluctuations in your scale weight along the journey, right? And if you're just using that as your sole indicator of progress, then again, it's not going to be a smooth ride for you. Weight is going to fluctuate for various reasons. If you've had a salty meal, your scale weight is going to go up. If you're not digesting something very well, or you've had a lot of food volume such as fruits and vegetables, you're probably going to weigh more the next day. If you've had a big, hard, intense training session, you're going to be holding on to some inflammation the next day, and that's going to take time to clear. So scale weight is not your only indicator of progress. You need to give it time and you need to be patient with things in order to actually see true fat loss. So don't go making rash decisions. Give it 2 to 3 weeks before you start making any changes. So rather than being impatient or being irrational and just reacting emotionally to the lack of progress that you feel like you're making, do this instead. Aim to lose around 0.5 to 1% of your body weight every single week. This is a sustainable and attainable rate of loss rather than trying to shoot for some number that's just unrealistic. As well as that, track photos. Take your photos every single week. Keep an eye on how your physique is looking. Take measurements such as your waist, your hips, your arms to track the progression in regards to muscle gain and fat loss. And as well as that, track your training. If you are just using body weight as your sole indicator for progression, you are setting yourself up for failure, right? Even on some weeks where, say for instance, body weight stays the same, but training progression improved, your physique looked better and you actually got leaner because you were looking at your photos and you were tracking your lifts in a logbook, you are making progress, you are moving in the right direction, even if the scale weight says otherwise. So build more awareness and track other variables. And by tracking these variables, it's really gonna help you in your informed decision-making when it comes to increasing cardio or decreasing your food. And finally, please just trust the process. Actually give it time. Any guy that you see that has built an incredible physique, got super shredded, in the best shape of their life, they haven't done it in 6 weeks. It's taken them a long time to do that. And if you're not willing to accept the fact that it's gonna take time, if you can't be patient with the process, you're always gonna find yourself in the same spot, and that is restarting over and over and over again. So just remember, right, most people, they're not actually failing, right? They're just quitting before the results start to show. So guys, just to wrap up this video and give you a reminder of the 6 mistakes that you want to be avoiding in order to make sure that you can actually achieve your fat loss results. Number 1, keep your nutrition accurate. Whether you're using an app to track your foods, whether you're following a meal plan, your foods that you're eating, the things that you're putting in your mouth every single day should remain consistent. Stop relying on heavy food drops in order to drive fat loss. Cardio is not the enemy, it's actually your friend. It allows you to eat more food and therefore drive more fat loss. Drop your weak mindset. Just because you're eating less food, that does not mean that you're automatically going to be getting weaker. If anything, tell yourself the opposite. This is the time now more than ever to really push yourself. Control your stress and your sleep. If you're not paying attention to these areas, you're not sleeping and your stress is high, you're setting yourself up for failure. Fat loss is not just about a caloric deficit, it's also a game of recovery. If your body is fresh and your mind is sharp, you are going to be able to drive more fat loss. Stop being a weekend warrior. The weekend makes up around 30% of your week. So if you're going in there with no plan whatsoever, you're gaining kilos every single weekend, you're literally just gonna be spinning your wheels and resetting your progress. And finally, have some patience. As the saying goes, right? Rome was not built in a day, and neither will your physique be, right? And the thing is as well, if you were to achieve your physique of your dreams or get into the shape that you want to be, just like that, the likelihood is you probably wouldn't even appreciate it. It is the hard work and the time that it takes to actually achieve your physique related goals that actually makes it worth it, because only you can do it and no one else can do it for you. So guys, hopefully this video helped and you can actually avoid now making these mistakes, the mistakes that I've made in the past and maybe you've even been making over your last fat loss phase. Now you can avoid them and you know exactly what you need to do to overcome them. However, after this video, if you still feel pretty overwhelmed and you just want help achieving your goals, you want to skip all of these steps and have me work with you directly in helping you achieve your goals, then if you head to the first link in my description, you can submit an application for online coaching. I'll be back with you with a video taking you through exactly what it is that we need to do to help you achieve your goals so you can skip all of the stress and we can just get the results. But apart from that, if you enjoyed the video, if it was of value to you, please hit the subscribe button, maybe even the like button as well, because it really does help. And other than that, I'll catch you in the next video.